The Lord is the one who guides me. That's why I lack nothing essential. These words have crossed centuries. Whispered by leaders in moments of uncertainty. Spoken by mothers on sleepless nights. And declared by people who, even without answers, chose to believe. But what if this statement is more than just spiritual comfort? What if it's a mental turning point? A powerful principle that can shift the way you see life, your future, and even prosperity. There is a silent pattern, an invisible code, that few notice. And when it's understood, it transforms how you deal with fear, scarcity, and success. Napoleon Hill, author of the classic Think and Grow Rich, spent decades studying the behavior of the most accomplished people of his time. He interviewed over 500 successful individuals, entrepreneurs, inventors, and leaders, and discovered one surprising truth. They all believed that everything starts in the mind. That faith isn't just spiritual, it's practical, active, and productive. And Psalm 23 was already revealing that same truth centuries ago. The Lord is the one who guides me. This isn't just poetic. It's a statement of identity. The psalmist isn't merely hoping. He's declaring with clarity who directs his steps, who provides, who he trusts, and right after, he affirms, I shall not want. It's not a wish. It's not, I hope things go well. It's a deep conviction, born from spiritual confidence and shaped into a mindset of peace and clarity. This inner certainty is what many call faith. But here, we're talking about a living faith, not one that's theoretical or emotional, but one that shows up in your posture, decisions, and direction. Napoleon Hill called this absolute conviction. He said, whatever the human mind can conceive and believe, it can achieve. But he also warned, it's not enough to imagine it. You must believe it with emotion, repeat it with intention, and hold on to it consistently until it takes root in your subconscious mind. Now think honestly. How many times have you said Psalm 23, but deep down, you didn't really believe that nothing would be missing? Many people speak powerful words, but live enslaved by doubt. They have faith on Sunday, but fear on Monday. They dream big, but act small. They speak of trust, yet feed scarcity in their thoughts. What Hill discovered, and what the psalm already teaches, is this. The mind must be convinced before reality will follow. This is the first pillar of transformation. Faith not as wishful thinking, but as a creative force that rewrites reality. Hill taught that faith is the only real antidote to failure, because it turns uncertainty into movement, fear into boldness, and scarcity into abundance. And the Bible confirms this. Every line of Psalm 23 is a call to alignment between what you believe inside and what you live outside. The Lord is my shepherd. I lack nothing. When you truly understand this, everything shifts. Your thoughts align. Your actions become intentional. And your identity becomes rooted. But why do so many people still live as if everything is missing? Because there's a huge gap between reciting a psalm and living the truth of it. Many want change, but not transformation. They seek prosperity, but don't renew their mindset. They want to harvest, but don't replant their beliefs. Napoleon Hill understood this deeply. That's why he insisted so much on the power of autosuggestion, the daily repetition of intentional thoughts, spoken with emotion and purpose, until they begin to shape a new inner identity. The Bible already teaches this principle. Faith comes by hearing, and hearing by the Word. Repetition, depth, absorption. Now ask yourself honestly, how do you start your day? If you wake up saying, everything's hard, money isn't enough, life doesn't help me, you're not just venting, you're programming your mind for scarcity. But when you say with conviction, even if things seem uncertain, I trust that I'll have what I need, you're sending a clear message to your inner self. I'm aligned with the source. I'm planting trust. I'm open to grow. And that's when the invisible starts to move. Maybe on the outside, nothing seems to change right away. But on the inside, something starts to shift. And when your internal structure changes, your external reality has no choice but to follow. Maybe right now, you're living the exact opposite of what this psalm declares. Maybe the bills are overdue. Your mind feels heavy. Your heart feels tired. But even so, if you keep affirming with faith, even when I don't see it yet, I trust that I'll lack nothing. That declaration, spoken with conviction, begins to rebuild something inside you. That's how faith becomes strength. Napoleon Hill discovered something powerful in those who went from scarcity to abundance. They kept moving forward, even when they didn't feel certain. They made the decision to continue, even when everything seemed to be falling apart. This is the kind of faith that transforms. Faith that persists, even in silence. Faith that resists, even when weary. Faith that acts, even with tears in its eyes. And that same strength is found in every line of Psalm 23. The Lord is my shepherd. That's a decision of who leads me. I shall not want. That's a decision of what I believe in. That order, once it becomes part of you, changes everything. While the world rushes in pursuit of more money, more answers, more approval, the psalmist reminds us of something greater. The peace of knowing you are already being cared for is stronger than the fear of not having enough. But don't confuse that peace with laziness. Peace isn't standing still hoping everything works out. Peace is the foundation that gives you courage to act. It's as if the psalm is whispering, you can work with excellence because you're no longer driven by fear. You can dream big because you know who's guiding your steps. You can invest in yourself because the source that sustains you never runs dry. He makes me lie down in green pastures. He leads me beside still waters. If the beginning of the psalm teaches us that faith is the foundation of abundance, this part reveals something even deeper. True prosperity begins in the rest of the soul. But don't get it twisted. This rest is not laziness. It's not a comfort zone or passivity. It's clarity. It's alignment. It's the inner peace of someone who already knows where they're going and why. Napoleon Hill noticed that the most successful people he studied had something in common long before their wealth appeared. They cultivated mental calm. They thought with precision. And they did not let anxiety or hurry dictate their choices. He called it harmony with infinite intelligence, a state where the mind is open to receive, discern, and take aligned action. Because the truth is, a noisy mind can't attract clarity. An anxious heart can't recognize divine timing. That's why many people are busy but not moving forward, always doing something but never getting anywhere. Now notice how the psalm describes God's action. He makes me lie down. He leads me beside. This isn't forceful. It's not chaotic. It's a gentle invitation to intentional pause. It's not weakness. It's strategy. The kind of rest that strengthens you. The kind of silence that gives you answers. The kind of peace that prepares you for the next level. Have you ever noticed how the greatest leaders, whether in faith or in business, tend to act the same way? They don't rush. They don't panic. They don't react impulsively. Instead, they walk with confidence, speak with precision, decide with clarity. Napoleon Hill taught that one of the most powerful traits in high achievers is the ability to combine two things: firm decisions and calm action. And that calmness doesn't come from the outside. It comes from deep conviction, from the quiet certainty that what hasn't happened yet is still being prepared. The problem is, most people live in a state of constant urgency. They wake up already behind. They make choices out of fear. They skip steps. They compare themselves endlessly. And they end up surrounded by noise, pressure, and confusion. But Psalm 23 offers another path. He leads me beside still waters. It's not pressure. It's not panic. It's gentle guidance. And Hill said something similar. The mind doesn't need screaming, it needs direction. You don't need more stress. You need peace to think clearly, clarity to decide, and presence to act wisely. So pause for a moment. Take a breath. Ask yourself, what are your green pastures today? Maybe it's a project that brings meaning, not just money. Maybe it's a life with more balance, less rush, and more intention. Or maybe it's simply the ability to make decisions without always feeling under pressure. And what about the still waters? They represent a soul at peace. A heart that no longer needs to prove anything to anyone. A mind that has learned to quiet the noise and trust the timing. Hill used to say, clarity is one of the most powerful weapons in achievement. When you know what you want, with detail, purpose, and conviction, everything around you begins to align. But when the mind is divided, confused, full of noise, everything becomes slower, heavier, and more frustrating. Peace is the channel through which ideas flow. Calm is the soil where solutions grow. And direction only appears for those who learn to silence the excess. That's why Jesus would withdraw to pray. Why the prophets spent days in silence. And why today's most effective leaders practice visualization, morning silence, and digital fasting. They understood a timeless truth. If you don't stop to listen, you'll keep running without knowing where you're going. So let me ask you, have you allowed yourself to rest in your green pastures lately? Have you trusted enough to be guided without anxiety? Have you been living with urgency or with purpose? That's the difference between a reactive life and a guided life. Maybe, without realizing it, you've been trying to do everything in your own strength. And maybe, that's why you're exhausted. Or maybe you're facing big decisions. But your mind is so overwhelmed that you don't even know where to start. If that's your reality, Psalm 23 is offering something sacred. Rest in trust. Return to being guided. Silence the noise. Napoleon Hill said, faith without direction is wasted energy. But he also taught, faith with clarity becomes unstoppable action. Here's a key truth. You don't have to find time to feel peace. You can start right now. Close your eyes for 2 minutes. Take a deep breath and say this intentionally. Guide me with peace. Show me the way. Let me through still waters. Make this a habit. Write it. Speak it. Visualize it. And if this resonates with your spirit, leave a comment that says, I choose peace over pressure. Because real progress doesn't come from chaos. It flows from consciousness and faith applied with direction. Even though I walk through the valley of the shadow of death, I will fear no evil, for you are with me. This is one of the most quoted verses in the Bible, and one of the most misunderstood. Because here, the tone changes. We're no longer talking about rest or provision. We're talking about something more intense. Walking through chaos with your soul still standing. The psalmist doesn't say, if I walk through the valley. He says, even though I walk. In other words, the valley is not optional. It's part of the journey. Napoleon Hill understood this too. He found that every great achiever faced their own valley. Loss, financial ruin, rejection, deep pain, failure. And what set the victorious apart? The way they walked through the valley. Hill wrote, every adversity carries with it the seed of an equal or greater benefit. Fear is the greatest thief of dreams in human history. Persistence is faith that refuses to quit. And Psalm 23 echoes that message. I will fear no evil. This isn't about feeling no fear. It's about deciding that fear will not lead. It's not about pretending it doesn't hurt. It's about walking anyway, with courage and faith. Napoleon Hill dedicated an entire chapter of Think and Grow Rich to something that quietly controls millions of lives. The 6 basic fears that block human potential. They are fear of poverty, fear of criticism, fear of illness, fear of losing love, fear of old age, fear of death. The scary part? Most of these fears operate beneath the surface. They live in the subconscious, shaped by trauma, family patterns, and a society conditioned by scarcity. Now look back at Psalm 23. The psalmist is surrounded by darkness. He's walking through a threatening valley. But he says with boldness, "I will fear no evil." That phrase is not a feeling, it's a decision. It's an act of inner leadership that says, "Fear may walk beside me, but it won't control me." Hill called this level of inner strength the dominant belief of the subconscious mind. It's the kind of faith that keeps moving, even when things get heavy, even when the numbers don't add up, even when people doubt you. It's the same mindset that led Thomas Edison to try over 1,000 times before inventing the light bulb, Walt Disney to keep going after dozens of rejections, Henry Ford to rebuild after repeated failures. They walked through the valley, but didn't stay in it, because the vision beyond the valley was greater than the fear within it. And that's where Psalm 23 gives us its greatest weapon. For you are with me. For you are with me. This is more than comfort. It's the core of unshakable courage. The psalmist doesn't deny the danger. He doesn't pretend the valley isn't dark. He just knows he's not alone in it. And that changes everything. Think about how many times you've held back. Not because you lacked ability, but because fear whispered too loudly. Fear of failure. Fear of what others might say. Fear of wasting time, money, or your reputation. And what if that so-called prudence you've been using is actually just fear wearing a suit of logic? Napoleon Hill taught, "The ones who rise aren't those without fear. They're the ones who act anyway." That's what Psalm 23 teaches too. Even though I walk through the valley, I will not fear, because you are with me. It's not the absence of difficulty that gives us power. It's the awareness of God's presence. And when that becomes real to you, fear loses its grip. Because where there is true faith, fear cannot stay. You don't need more certainty. You need more boldness. Not more control, more trust. Not more answers, more presence. Napoleon Hill dedicated an entire chapter of Think and Grow Rich to something that quietly controls millions of lives. The 6 basic fears that block human potential. They are fear of poverty, fear of criticism, fear of illness, fear of losing love, fear of old age, fear of death. The scary part? Most of these fears operate beneath the surface. They live in the subconscious, shaped by trauma, family patterns, and a society conditioned by scarcity. Now look back at Psalm 23. The psalmist is surrounded by darkness. He's walking through a threatening valley. But he says with boldness, "I will fear no evil." That phrase is not a feeling, it's a decision. It's an act of inner leadership that says, "Fear may walk beside me, but it won't control me." Hill called this level of inner strength the dominant belief of the subconscious mind. It's the kind of faith that keeps moving, even when things get heavy, even when the numbers don't add up, even when people doubt you. It's the same mindset that led Thomas Edison to try over 1,000 times before inventing the light bulb, Walt Disney to keep going after dozens of rejections, Henry Ford to rebuild after repeated failures. They walked through the valley, but didn't stay in it, because the vision beyond the valley was greater than the fear within it. And that's where Psalm 23 gives us its greatest weapon. For you are with me. For you are with me. This is more than comfort. It's the core of unshakable courage. The psalmist doesn't deny the danger. He doesn't pretend the valley isn't dark. He just knows he's not alone in it. And that changes everything. Think about how many times you've held back. Not because you lacked ability, but because fear whispered too loudly. Fear of failure. Fear of what others might say. Fear of wasting time, money, or your reputation. And what if that so-called prudence you've been using is actually just fear wearing a suit of logic? Napoleon Hill taught, "The ones who rise aren't those without fear. They're the ones who act anyway." That's what Psalm 23 teaches too. "Even though I walk through the valley, I will not fear, because you are with me." It's not the absence of difficulty that gives us power. It's the awareness of God's presence. And when that becomes real to you, fear loses its grip. Because where there is true faith, fear cannot stay. You don't need more certainty. You need more boldness. Not more control, more trust. Not more answers, more presence. So declare it out loud. Even in the valley, I keep moving forward. That kind of statement activates something deeper. It turns fear into fuel. It opens the path for what's waiting on the other side.